The hallway smelled like medicine and cold metal. The lights above hummed softly, casting pale shadows on the clean white floor. Human soldier Daniel Walker had been assigned to this alien medical facility for only one reason: security. His job was simple: follow orders, guard the patients, and never get involved. He thought it would be boring, just another quiet duty post. But the moment he stepped past the reinforced glass doors of Ward 7, he knew this assignment would not be normal. Inside the large room, surrounded by machines and glowing blue tubes, sat a girl unlike anyone he had ever seen. Her skin was a soft silver tone that seemed to shimmer faintly under the lights. Her hair floated slightly as if weightless, and her eyes were deep violet. Watching him with a strange calm, she looked small, fragile, almost too delicate for the cold steel chair she sat on. The guard at the door whispered to him, "That's patient 42, last one of her kind, scheduled for euthanasia in 7 days." The words hit him strangely. It was said so casually, like talking about turning off a machine. Daniel glanced at her again, and her gaze didn't break. It was steady, almost searching. He walked into the room, boots tapping quietly against the polished floor. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You're human," she said, in a voice soft but clear. Her accent was odd, each word carrying a small echo. He nodded, yes. She looked away for a moment, then back at him. "Good. I was hoping they would send one." Her words made him pause. "Why is that?" he asked. She leaned forward, her thin hands gripping the edge of the chair. "Because I have a last wish," she said. Her tone was calm, but there was something urgent hidden beneath it. Daniel frowned. "A last wish?" She nodded slowly. "Before they end me, I want to try the human reproduction method for a moment." He thought he had misheard her. The words were so unexpected, so shocking, that his mind refused to process them. "You? What?" he asked. She didn't look away, didn't flinch. "I have read about it, studied it. But I have never experienced it." Daniel's training told him to end this conversation, to report it immediately, but something in her eyes kept him there. They were not eyes of a dying patient. They were eyes of someone fighting for the last piece of her existence. "Why would you want that?" he asked quietly. She looked down at her hands. "Because my people cannot create life anymore. We are broken. Our bodies fail. Our children never come. I am the last of my bloodline, and when I go, it ends forever." The machines around her beeped softly, measuring her weak heartbeat. He realized then how fragile she truly was. Every breath seemed like an effort, but her voice stayed steady. "If I do this, maybe I can leave something behind, something that proves I was here," she said. Daniel's chest tightened. He had guarded prisoners, criminals, and dangerous alien warriors before. But this was different. She was no threat, no monster, just a dying girl asking for a final moment of life. "And why me?" he asked. "Because you are human," she said simply. "And humans still know how to give life the natural way." Silence filled the room. Daniel's mind raced. This was impossible, dangerous, and completely against every rule he knew. But her words carried a strange weight, a truth that pulled at something deep inside him. "I can't promise you anything," he said finally. She gave a faint smile. "I am not asking for a promise. I am asking for a choice." He studied her for a long moment. She didn't look away. Her eyes stayed locked on his, steady and unafraid. That courage was rare, especially from someone staring at death. "What's your name?" he asked. "Leora," she answered. "It means light." Though my people have not seen light for many years, Daniel wanted to say more, but the door hissed open. A medical officer in a white coat stepped in. "Guard, your shift here is temporary. You don't speak to the patient unless necessary." The man's tone was sharp. Daniel gave a short nod but didn't take his eyes off Leora. The officer left, the door sealing behind him. Leora leaned closer, lowering her voice. "They will not let me see you often. If you care to hear my reason fully, come back tonight." He hesitated, glancing at the security camera in the corner. "I can't," she interrupted softly. "Yes, you can. I will be waiting." As he stepped out of the room, her words echoed in his head. He had come here to follow orders, to guard a facility. But now he was walking away from a girl whose life was measured in days. A girl whose last wish was something no rulebook could prepare him for. And deep down, he knew he would return. Daniel could not stop thinking about her words. They followed him through the hallways, into the security break room, even into the silence of his small sleeping quarters. He had seen death before, but never like this. Not with a request so strange, so personal, so impossible. When night came, he found himself standing outside Ward 7 again, heart beating harder than it should. The door recognized his guard ID and slid open with a soft hiss. The room was darker now. Only the faint blue glow of the machines lit the air. Leora was sitting up in her bed, her eyes fixed on the door as if she knew he would come. "I knew you wouldn't ignore me," she said softly. Her voice carried a tired warmth that somehow felt like trust. Daniel stepped closer. "I still don't understand why you would ask me for something like this." She tilted her head slightly. "Because you are human, and because you are here." Her words were simple, but they carried a meaning deeper than he wanted to admit. She motioned for him to sit, and when he did, she began speaking in a low voice. "My people were once full of life. Our cities were alive with children, songs, and families. But something in our bodies began to fail. Year after year, fewer of us were born. Then none at all. The scientists tried everything: cloning, artificial wombs, genetic engineering, but the spark of life never returned." Her hands tightened around the blanket. "Now I am the last. They keep me alive because I am a medical curiosity, not because they care. They poke and test. And when they are done, they will end me quietly. No one will remember me except a line in their data files." She looked up at him, her violet eyes shining with a strange mix of sorrow and determination. "But if I leave something behind, even a small part of me, then I will not be just a number. I will not vanish completely." Daniel felt a weight in his chest. He thought about how easy it was for the people in this facility to speak about ending her life as if it were a matter of procedure. But here she was, speaking not with fear, but with the stubborn will to live in some way beyond her own body. He leaned forward. "You know what you're asking is dangerous. If anyone finds out, I could be court-martialed, imprisoned. Worse." She gave a faint smile. "If anyone finds out, I will already be gone, and they cannot punish me." Her tone was almost teasing, but her eyes betrayed how serious she was. There was a long silence, broken only by the soft hum of the machines. Daniel realized his hands were clenched without meaning to. "You could ask for anything else," he said quietly. "I could take you outside, show you the stars one last time, bring you food, music, anything." She shook her head slowly. "No, those things would fade. Memories vanish, feelings fade, but life continues, even if I am not there to see it." Her words left him with no quick answer. He had never met someone who spoke about death like this, as if it was just a door she would walk through, but she wanted to leave her shadow behind. "In the light, I've read about your people," she said after a moment. "You fight wars. You survive impossible conditions. You build homes on empty worlds. And you make more of your kind, again and again, no matter how hard life becomes. That is what I envy most." He didn't know why, but hearing her say that stirred something. In him, maybe pride, maybe guilt, maybe both. He had always thought of reproduction as just nature, not something extraordinary, but to her, It was a miracle. Finally, he asked, "What if I said yes? What then?" She looked at him with a stillness that was almost frightening. "Then I will have no more regrets," she said, "and when they end me, I will not be afraid." Her voice was steady, but there was a tremor in her hands. She was weakening. He could see it. Every movement seemed slower than when he had seen her earlier that day. The thought that time was slipping away made the room feel smaller. Daniel stood, pacing slowly. His training screamed at him to walk away, to report this, to forget it ever happened. But every step he took brought him back to the same truth. She was going to die no matter what. The only question was whether. She died with her wish, fulfilled or not. When he stopped, he found her watching him closely. "You are deciding," she whispered. "Yes," he admitted. "I am." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then take your time, but not too much. I don't have long." The words hung in the air like a quiet countdown. And Daniel knew that from this moment forward, every visit, every glance, and every choice he made would push him closer to a line he could never cross back over. The next night, Daniel found himself standing outside her room again. He had told himself it was only to check security, to make sure everything was in order. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Something about Leora's presence pulled him back, like a quiet gravity he couldn't fight when the door slid open. She was sitting on the bed with her knees drawn up, her head turned toward the small reinforced window, staring at the faint glow of distant stars. She didn't look surprised to see him. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come," she said softly. He stepped inside and let the door close behind him. "And disappoint you?" "I doubt I could," he replied. She tilted her head, a tiny smile breaking through her usual calm. "I like that answer." Her voice was weaker tonight, but her eyes were no less sharp. He noticed her breathing seemed slower, more deliberate. As if each breath needed effort, it reminded him that the clock was still ticking. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something wrapped in a napkin. A tay. He unfolded it to reveal a small square of chocolate, dark and rich. Her eyes widened slightly. "Is that?" He nodded. "From the mess hall. Humans call it chocolate. It's sweet. Try it." She took it carefully, holding it between her thin fingers like it was precious the moment it touched her lips. Her expression changed, her eyes closed, and, for a brief second, she looked almost peaceful. "It's warm," she whispered, "and it melts. It's alive in its own way." He smiled faintly. "That's just the sugar talking." She shook her head. "No, it's more. My people. We forgot how to enjoy small things like this. We lost them while trying to survive." Her gaze softened. As she looked at him, "You keep giving me reasons to think your kind is worth remembering." For a moment, they just sat there in the quiet hum of the machines. The chocolate was gone, but the warmth it left seemed to stay between them. Then she said, "You wanted to know my real reason?" "The truth I didn't say before." Daniel leaned in slightly. His instincts told him whatever she was about to share mattered more than anything else. "I'm listening." She took a slow breath. "When I was a child, my mother told me stories about other worlds. Worlds where families lived under open skies, where laughter was louder than the machines keeping you alive. She told me about humans, how they were stubborn, how they refused to give up on life even when the universe tried to crush them. I always wanted to see if that stubbornness was real." Her voice grew quieter, "And now? I don't have time to see the whole human world, so I want to experience the one thing that makes your kind so different from mine. The ability to create life without machines, without laboratories, without permission from anyone." Daniel's jaw tightened. The more she spoke, the harder it became to keep a safe distance. It wasn't just her request, it was the way she spoke about life, as if she was already standing on the edge of an abyss and wanted one last piece of light before she fell. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he moved closer to the bed, resting his elbows on his knees. You understand that what you're asking? It's not just physical, it's dangerous for both of us. She nodded slowly. Danger means nothing to the dying. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He realized then that she wasn't trying to manipulate him. She wasn't playing some trick. This was simply her truth, raw and unfiltered. He sighed, running a hand over his face. I broke one rule already bringing you chocolate. She smiled faintly. Then maybe you can break another. There was a long silence after that, the kind where every second feels heavier than the last. He could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, and somewhere deep inside, he knew that if he kept coming back, the answer she wanted would eventually slip from his lips. Finally, he stood up. I'll think about it. She didn't protest, didn't beg, just nodded with quiet understanding. I'll be here, she said simply, until I'm not. When he left the room that night, he didn't head straight to his quarters. Instead, he walked out to the observation deck of the facility. Staring at the endless black sea of stars, he wondered if somewhere out there, another dying soul was making a wish as impossible as hers, and he wondered how many more nights he had before her time was gone. The next morning began like any other in the facility. Cold light spilling through the narrow windows, the sound of distant machinery echoing in the corridors. But for Daniel, the air felt heavier. Every step toward Ward 7 seemed slower, as if some invisible force was holding him back. When he arrived, 2 medical staff were standing outside Leora's room, speaking in low voices. He caught the words 3 days and final preparation. His stomach tightened. 3 days, that was all she had left. The staff noticed him and quickly walked away. He swiped his ID and stepped inside. Leora was lying on her side, her silver hair spilling across the pillow like threads of light. Her breathing was shallow, and her eyes were half closed. But when she saw him, a faint spark returned to her gaze. You came back, she whispered. He pulled a chair closer to her. Bet? Of course I did. She studied his face for a moment. You heard them, didn't you? He hesitated, then nodded. She closed her eyes briefly. 3 days, that's not much time. Daniel wanted to say something comforting, but nothing felt right. Instead, he asked, How are you feeling? She let out a weak laugh, like a dying star, beautiful for a moment, then gone. Her voice trembled slightly, but her expression was calm. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Leora, I've been thinking about what you asked. Her eyes opened slowly, focusing on him. And? She whispered. He didn't answer immediately. His mind was still tangled in fear and doubt. If I do this, it will change everything. She gave a faint smile. If you don't, nothing will change at all. Silence hung between them, broken only by the slow beeping of the monitor beside her. Daniel reached out and gently took her hand. It was light, fragile, almost weightless. He could feel the faint pulse under her skin. Tell me something, he said. If you could live, if there was a cure, would you still want this? She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. If I could live, I would want a family. I would want to raise a child under a real sky. But that's a dream I will never have. So I will take the only piece of it I can. The honesty in. Her words pressed against his chest like a weight. He realized this wasn't just a strange request born out of curiosity. It was a desperate attempt to claim some piece of a life she had been denied. He stayed longer than usual that day, talking with her about things that had nothing to do with rules or dying. She asked about Earth, about rainstorms and oceans, about the sound of human cities at night. He told her about his childhood near the coast, about the taste of salt in the air, about the way the waves seemed endless. Her eyes glistened as if she could almost see it. At one point, she whispered, If you could take me there. I think I could forget the pain. He squeezed her hand. Gently, if I could, I would, when it was time for him to leave. She didn't let go right away. Her grip was weak, but unwilling. Don't wait too long. Daniel, she said softly, time is a thief here. He nodded, unable to speak. That night, back in his quarters, he couldn't sleep. He lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with her in his mind, her voice, her eyes, the way she spoke about life as if it was the rarest treasure in the universe. Somewhere deep inside, he felt the decision forming, slow but certain. He had always followed orders, always done what was expected, but this was different. This was about a single life, fragile and fading, asking for one final act of kindness. When the morning came, he knew. The rules no longer mattered as much as the promise he was about to make. The facility was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Daniel walked through the dim corridors, each step echoing louder than it should. His mind was clear now, too clear. He knew what he was about to do, and there was no turning back. When he reached Ward 7, the door recognized his ID and slid open without a sound. Leora was awake, sitting up against the pillows, as if she had been waiting. Her violet eyes met his, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in her gaze, only a calm certainty. You decided, she said quietly. He closed the door behind him. The soft click, sealing them away from the rest of the world. Yes, he replied. The word felt heavy, final. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Then come here. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more weight than any order he had ever heard. He moved to her side, the machines around her humming steadily. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was tense, thick with unspoken thoughts. He could feel the pulse of his own heartbeat in his ears. This isn't about pity, she said suddenly. I don't want you to think I'm asking because I'm afraid to die. I'm asking because I want to live in some way, even if it's only through something we create together. Her words were slow, deliberate, each one finding its place. Deep in his chest, Daniel reached out, taking her hand. It was cold, but her fingers curled gently around his. I know, he said. His voice was low, almost lost in the hum of the room. She studied him for a long moment, as if searching for doubt. Then, we have no time to waste. She whispered. The world outside the room didn't matter anymore. The rules, the risks, the consequences, they all faded until there was only her, only the fragile figure before him. Fighting to leave something of herself behind, he moved closer. His presence a shield between her and the cold machinery. Her breathing quickened slightly. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Her eyes never left his, even as her hands trembled. Everything about the moment felt fragile. Not because of her condition, but because it was real. Stripped of every layer of duty and protocol, this was not a soldier and a patient. This was simply two beings, one giving, one receiving, both holding on to a fleeting chance to defy the ending written for her. When it was over, there was no sound but their breathing. Slow and steady, her hand found his again, holding on as if to anchor herself in the present. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. I feel alive, she whispered. Daniel stayed with her, not caring about the passing hours, not caring about the fact that security could walk in at any moment. He brushed a strand of her hair away from her face, and she leaned into his touch like it was the most natural thing in the world. Thank you, she said softly. You've given me something no one else ever could. He shook his head. No, you gave it to yourself. I just helped. She let out a small laugh, weak but warm. For the first time since he had met her, there was no trace of sadness in her eyes. She looked at peace, even as her body betrayed her with weakness. Her breaths grew slower, but not from pain more. Like a deep, calm rest, they stayed like that for a long time. Hands intertwined, saying nothing. The moment didn't need words. It was enough to just exist in it. When he finally left her room, the corridor felt different. The air lighter, the silence less oppressive. But beneath it all, he carried the weight of what he had done, and the knowledge that it had changed them. Both forever, the next day. Daniel noticed the difference the moment he entered the corridor. 2 security officers stood outside Ward 7, their expressions unreadable. A medical supervisor was with them, holding a data tablet. They stopped talking the second they saw him. Inside, Leora was awake. But her smile was faint, almost cautious. "Something's wrong," Daniel whispered as he stepped closer. She nodded slightly. "They ran tests this morning." Her voice was calm, but he could see a shadow of worry in her eyes. "What kind of tests?" he asked. She looked away. "Blood work, hormone scans." More than usual, Daniel's stomach tightened. The pieces clicked together too easily if the facility suspected even the slightest change. They would start digging, and if they found out the truth, both of them were finished. The door slid open suddenly, and a medical officer entered with a portable scanner. "Routine check," he said flatly. Daniel stepped aside. Trying to keep his breathing steady, Leora let them work. Without complaint, her expression perfectly blank, when they were done. The officer left without a word. The door closed, and for a moment, the room felt like it was holding its breath. Daniel leaned in, speaking low. "We have to be careful. They're watching now." She gave a faint smile. "I told you it was dangerous." Dangerous didn't begin to cover it. The entire facility operated under strict protocols, and any violation meant severe punishment for her. The cost would be nothing. They planned to end her life anyway, but for him, it would mean trial, prison, maybe worse, that night. When his shift was over, he stayed in the empty mess hall long after everyone else had gone. His hands were wrapped around a cup of untouched coffee. He kept hearing her voice in his head. Not the words she had spoken last night, but the way she had said them, like they carried the weight of an entire life. Part of him wondered if he should have walked away, but every time he tried to picture it, he saw her sitting alone in that room, counting down her last days, and the thought was unbearable. The next morning, the suspicion became more obvious. 2 guards followed him when he went to her ward, pretending to be on routine patrol. Inside, she was pale, but still alert. Her eyes brightened when she saw him, though she quickly hid it. "They know something," she whispered when the guards stepped outside. He nodded once. "Then we make sure they never know everything." She tilted her head, studying him for a long moment. "You would risk everything for me," she said softly. It wasn't a question. He didn't answer, but the silence was enough. The hours passed slowly. Every sound in the corridor made Daniel tense, expecting the door to fly open and a group of officers to drag him away. But no one came, not yet. That evening, when the lights dimmed for night cycle, Leora reached for his hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were steady, no matter what happens now. "You gave me what I needed," she said. Her voice was so quiet it felt like a secret between them and the air itself. Daniel stayed until the early hours, listening to her breathing, watching the slow rise and fall of her chest. He knew that any moment could be the last time he saw her. Not because of her illness, but because the facility might decide to remove him from his post when he finally left. He glanced back through the small window in the door. She was still looking at him, her gaze calm, almost as if she was telling him without words that she was ready for whatever came next. 2 days later, the order came. Daniel was summoned to the command office. The message was short, clinical, and left no room for misunderstanding. Leora's scheduled euthanasia would proceed at first light. He walked back to Ward 7 with heavy steps. Every corner of the corridor felt sharper, every sound louder when he entered her room. She was already sitting upright, dressed in a clean white patient robe. Her silver hair had been brushed, her face calm. "They told you," she said softly. He nodded once. She smiled faintly. "Then we have very little time left." He moved to her side, taking her hand. "Are you afraid?" She shook her head. "Not anymore. You gave me what I asked for. I'm leaving with no regrets." Her voice was steady, but her fingers tightened around his. As if holding on to the last thread of connection between them, they talked through the night. Their words wandered from childhood memories to dreams they knew would never come true. She asked him to describe Earth again. The oceans, the storms, the smell of rain. He told her everything he could remember, painting pictures with his voice, watching her close her eyes and pretend she was there. When the morning lights came on, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway. The door slid open and two medical staff stepped inside. One carried a tablet. The other pushed a small cart covered in sterile white cloth. "It's time," one of them said quietly. Daniel stood, his jaw tight. Leora looked at him one last time, her eyes holding both gratitude and something deeper. "Remember me," she whispered. They wheeled her out, and Daniel followed until the corridor split. Guards blocked his way. He stood there as the distance between them grew, the sound of the cart's wheels fading into silence. Hours later, when his shift ended, he sat alone in the observation deck, staring at the endless black of space. He didn't know if he felt relief or grief. All he knew was that the room felt colder without her. 3 days passed before he heard the whisper of a rumor. A junior medic talking too quickly in the mess hall said something about unexpected results in patient 42's final scans. Daniel didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. He knew, deep down, what they had found. That night, he stood at the far end of the facility's docking bay, watching the stars. Somewhere, sealed away in the hidden archives of this place, was proof that she had not left empty. Something of her lived on. Something the facility might try to erase, but could never fully destroy. He closed his eyes and let the memory of her voice fill the silence. She had asked him for life, and he had given it. Now, even if no one else ever knew, he would carry the truth for the rest of his days. And somewhere, in the quiet dark of the universe, her legacy waited to be found. Asterisk.